But you went on to spend 13 years playing in Europe
Mm-hmm.
for 8 teams in 6 countries, making stops in Austria, France, Portugal, England, Switzerland, and Germany. You picked up at least one additional language, German,
Mm-hmm.
as well as an additional citizenship, Austrian citizenship. What was the key for you to have such a long European basketball career, and what would you recommend to young players wishing to have the same?
I think for me personally, the key to the longevity that I had as a player was that I was able to adapt, flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing at a time where, like we talked about before, where technology was much different.
Mm-hmm.
There was no Skype, there was no FaceTiming, there was no Facebook, there was no any of the things that are very prevalent today. So it was a different time, and it forced me also out of my comfort zone. I think if I would have come over here now, it would have been a lot easier,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe I would have not had the longevity, or I would have been different in my thinking. Because in '95 when I came over, people didn't speak a whole lot of English in the city that I started out in Kapfenberg in
Mm-hmm.
Austria. So I was forced to learn German. I was forced to think outside the box, and not be so focused on what I missed back home or
Right.
things like that. I was able to integrate myself very easily
Mm-hmm.
after the initial culture shock.
Right.
And I think that was a big key to later the trajectory of my career, because once I started to learn German,
Mm-hmm.
it made me more at home. I had a stronger sense of this. Austria at the time is my home.
Right.
I could make this my home, and I think that being flexible, being able to adapt, and not being so strict on this is my basketball game, it should be how it is in America, or this is my lifestyle, it should be how it is in America, was definitely a key to me staying over here as long as I did. There were guys that were much better players,
Right.
had way more game than I did.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen them come, seen them go. They came for a year, came for maybe a half a year, and just couldn't accept the difference of Europe in general, not even the basketball, but just the living style, the lifestyle here. And they were homesick, things like that. And they couldn't stay as long as I did, because they were just too used to being at home,
Mm-hmm.
being in America, and the lifestyle and the basketball there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you address many of these topics in more detail in your book, and of course, I had a chance to read an early copy of the book, and I think you provide some very essential tips and advice as to what one should do to be a successful basketball player in Europe. At the same time, when it comes to your tips on professionalism, I think these can also be applied to American football as well.
Exactly.
But why was it important for you to write this book? And of course, when and where can our viewers find your book?
I originally started writing this book, I think I was in England at the time, so that's about 14, 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always liked to write, and that's one of my passions. And I wanted to do something to give back. I wanted to share information that could help future generations.
Right.
And at the time, I wasn't nearly as good as a writer as I am now, or
Mm-hmm.
at least I hope to be now. And I tried to get it published, and I couldn't get it published. There was no self-publishing back then.
Okay.
So basically, I put it in a box, and I kind of forgot about it. It was in my cellar for years. Every once in a while, I would dig it out and send it to somebody who maybe I knew personally that
Mm-hmm.
might need some information on how to come live over here and play basketball over here. But in general, I kind of forgot about it until last August, when my best friend was here and we started talking about it. And he said, "Hey, why don't you give it a shot again? Why don't you rework it? update it, do some things, and self-publish it yourself. And that kind of got the ball rolling. And once I got it and started to do some more research to update the book, and I found that it was a lot of the things that I had written 15 years ago were still prevalent today. Of course, there's things about contracts or other things that I have in the book that have changed over the years, but a lot of the information was the same. So I thought, okay, this book could possibly help someone, and if I help one person, that's okay for me.
Right.
That's fine for me. It just has a lot of information that will make the life or the transition from America or Canada or wherever you're from to Europe a lot easier. A lot of the information that's in the book I had no idea about when I first came over here. There was nobody to take me under their wing and explain these things, explain contract structure, what to do if you're fired, what to do if you're injured, what to do if you would like to change teams in the middle of a season or anything like that. There was no one to help me out. And as far as I know, there are a couple of people that have written a similar book to mine, but we all have different stories.
Right.
We all tell our story in a different view. And I'm really proud of the people that have also written books similar to mine, but there's not a lot of us. I can think of 3 people that have written a book similar to mine. And there's new players coming out of college every year that could use this information to help themselves. Some guys might think, okay, that's a step that's too much for me. I don't have an agent. I played at a small school. But all of that is nonsense. If you were to have the information at hand in your possession that can help you later, then it makes things a lot easier.
Right. You have a better view on it. You don't feel like, oh, I went to such a small school, and then when you find out, also mentioned in your book, they like guys from not just guys but women as well, but they like players from small schools. So
Exactly.
You will most likely be the perfect fit.
Yeah, and like you said before, like I think, okay, this is a basketball book because it's based on my
right, of course,
my life or experience. But I think it translates a lot of the things in the book, a lot of the information in the book translates to all sports, or even just if someone wants to live in Europe, period.
Right.
I've had a lot of talks with people in different sports, and they've told me like, hey, that happened to me too. One of my friends who played football over here, he also told me, hey, I wish I would have known this point when I was coming, or my first year over here when I came out. So I think it translates into many different sports. Some things, of course, are different. How sports organizations are run in Europe are different in basketball, football, volleyball, or whatever soccer sport. But there are some things that correlate through the different sports as well.
Okay.